He was pretty gawky looking. Though.
I was gonna say. I mean, hello everybody, and welcome to the One Trick Hero podcast. My name is Paxfos, and I'm your host as always. And with me, as always, is
Oh
Foxia.
shit! New Twitch Prime loot, a Dead Mouse PUBG crate. Woo!
Woo! Good, nothing but the best for Twitch Prime.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Dead
fix my
Mouse.
hair on stream here.
Oh wait, it's Dead Mouse 5.
Yeah, the Dead Mouse 5 pack. Yeah, you want to
I
get
misread
that.
Don't
Anyways,
wanna mispronounce it.
this is episode 20. Didn't think we were gonna make it this long, but we did.
What did you think was gonna happen before 20 episodes?
I don't know. One of us was gonna die, or I don't know.
What did you make the title for this one?
I just for the playoffs and for finals, I'm just putting what it is. So this is playoff Ramble
okay.
week 1. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I figure we might as well keep it on topic for this, for at least in the title, anyways. Yeah.
I thought I thought this was the cast we were gonna rate pizza rolls.
Dude, are there other pizza rolls than Totino's?
Probably. Do I know of them?
I don't think
No.
so, man.
I don't know.
I think Totino's has that market cornered, man.
Totino's is king.
Dude, okay, so I had
No, there's definitely there used to be at least Hot Pocket ones and a few other brands. I think.
There's Eliso one time got me it wasn't Totino's, it was like a Great Value brand or something, and you can taste the difference. It's not Totino's. Let me tell you.
What if that was their tagline, like Great Value? You can taste the difference, but in a bad way.
In a bad way.
Yeah, like
Oh,
a
man.
self-depreciating tagline for a food product.
That'd be good.
would be.
But no, we're not here to talk about pizza rolls. We're here to talk about the playoffs, the week 1 of the playoffs. Did not go. It did. Yeah, the quarterfinals. It did not go the way we wanted it to. Either you or I. But it did go. So the matchups was Philadelphia Fusion versus Boston Uprising, and then London Spitfire versus Los Angeles Gladiators. The Los Angeles Valiant, as well as New York Excelsior, they are the top seeds, so they did not have to basically vie to get into the grand finals, of course. So the matchup of Philadelphia Fusion versus Boston, Philly ended up beating Boston. And the way, just as a refresher, in case anybody doesn't know, the way the games worked is there was 3, I think you'd call them sets, or 3 matches. How would you say that? 3 games?
What would I say? I'd say, yeah, the whole thing is a series, and each one was a game or a match. That's how I would say.
So basically, it was the typical best of 5 for.
But each one of those was a best of 3.
Right. So
Or
basically,
no, wait. Each one was a
best of 5. No, best of 5.
Yeah, each one of those was a best of 5.
Yeah.
It was a best of 3 of a best of 5s.
Exactly. So it was a best of 5s on each game that they met up, and then it was 3 separate games in a set or a series, basically.
Well, whoever got 2 got 2 best of 5 victories first was the winner. That's why it's a best of 3, best of 5s. Best of 5, best of 3.
I don't. Oh my God! Hold on a second. I'm gonna actually pull up the.
It was a best of 3 of best of 5s.
Okay, hold on.
It was the best of the best of the best.
All right, here it goes. Each series is a best, so it's a series. Each series is a best of 3 matches. Each match is a best of 5 maps. Okay, so each match, 5 maps were played, and best of the 5 won the match, and then out of those matches, you had to win 2 out of 3. There was 3 total matches you could do.
But not with every one was there 5 maps, because
exactly,
only if it was 2-2 and then tiebreaker.
Exactly. So what we were left with, the first ones up was Philadelphia Fusion versus Boston Uprising, and
on Wednesday.
Wednesday was Philly and Boston, and then it was London versus LA Gladiators. On that first day, Philly beat Boston pretty handedly, I gotta say, 3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
And then
Boston looked, I mean, they looked all right because they won 1 map, but it was pretty much just the Philly show on that day.
Yeah, as a Boston fan, it was kind of disheartening to. I mean, as a Boston fan, here, hold on, I gotta rep the official sponsor of.
Did that start in Boston?
No, but it's Dunkin' Donuts has been like the official sponsor for anything Robert Kraft related for a while now.
So, oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
They're like the sponsor for the Patriots and like.
Did he like work at Dunkin'?
Dunkin' Donuts is definitely a New England thing. I mean, it's not only there, and I don't know if it even started there, but it's definitely been a New England.
I think it started on the East Coast because it wasn't on the West
Coast.
It
was definitely East Coast, but I don't remember if it was New England.
Yeah.
But anyways, Boston didn't perform up to par, at least in my opinion. Not throwing anything against Philadelphia, they played exceptionally well.
Yeah, Philly had one of their hot streak.
Yeah, well, this was going back to what you and I had talked about before, where it's like Philadelphia is that team that just like is on or off, and it sucks so much when they're on because they're really good. But
unless you're a Philly fan.
Well, unless you're a Philly fan, of course. But I mean, how many Philly fans do we know? Besides Solident, because he has to be for color scheme.
Yeah, but he's only a fan because of the colors. It doesn't really count. I mean, there's a lot of Philly fans.
No, I mean there is. I just meant that we know.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I don't think I know anyone.
So so the game after that on Wednesday was Spitfire versus Gladiators, and Gladiators swept the floor.
Oh yeah,
on Wednesday. That was like nasty.
They like
really good.
Really fucking stomped them.
Yeah, it was a good show by pretty much everybody. The only notable person that wasn't there was obviously Fissure. What was the reasoning for Fissure not being in the official? What did he say exactly? Do you remember? Because he gave the reasoning, right?
The official like reasoning was that iRemix performed better in scrims in the current meta for playoffs than Fissure was, so Fissure took a step back to let iRemix play because he thought it was better for the team. There's a lot of rumors on the back end about other shit that he also went into some clarification from, like I told you, he said, this is from Fissure, but he said he said that he was asked by management if he would prefer to be on a team that had all Koreans or if he would prefer, right? And then he said, well, it's better communication if everybody speaks one language. So he thought they were asking, if he wanted them, like if they were going to rebuild that team, for instance, if they should get rid of all the players that aren't Korean and just go for a full Korean roster for the Gladiators. And according to what I read, he said that he would rather just go to a different team than have the Gladiators pull apart the roster just for his sake.
Yeah.
Because he thought the roster is really good and didn't deserve to be broken up just for his. And apparently that came out and people were saying, oh, he asked to get transferred to a different team and all this other shit. I don't know. I think most of that is still
like a lot of rumor mill stuff.
Yeah. So maybe that will happen, but it seems like it was just a miscommunication between, he didn't understand their question, but he's not, as far as officially, I don't think they've stated that he's benched forever or anything. It's just through the playoffs because our remix was performing better in scrims. And Fissure himself said that, so.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, even if
maybe they just should have tried harder to get Fissure to work better in scrims, because not that I don't think the loss for the Gladiators was. I don't think iRemix is to blame entirely. I think because so before I get into that, the Saturday where the series finished.
Oh, I was gonna say actually, I'm sorry, but we're jumping the gun right now. Just so everybody knows, even though Los Angeles did beat Spitfire handily on Wednesday. That Saturday, that 3-0, that Saturday, London got 6-0'd them and defeated both matches, so it's pretty bad. But anyways, go ahead, continue.
Well, and Boston also lost. Or no, Boston won the second series.
Boston won the second series.
The second series of maps, and then
the
second match, and then tied it 1-1, and then they lost the third one.
Yep.
But the third one was still 3-1. So Boston looked a bit better on Saturday. Mistakes, I think, was playing Friday. Yeah, right. Because it was Friday and then Saturday for the London and Gladiators. Anyway, Mistakes did look better than he did on Wednesday. Because I think on Wednesday it seemed like their DPS wasn't really showing up to as much as they should.
Yeah.
Then they kind of stepped it up on Friday, but it wasn't enough. Philly just was looking real good.
Philly was destroying, man. It was
Carpe and EQO just really playing at a high level.
And okay, I know we're going on a bunch of tangents right now, but I feel like a good portion of that was because the lack of Tracer, like, and this is kind of like, I'm sorry, it's just not a, like, Tracer still has her uses, but it's not the way Tracer's played now, at least in the league. Tracer has her place, but she's kind of used sparingly. She's
become more of a niche pick.
Yeah, basically, there's certain comps that run her, and she's still very good for that, but she's not in every comp. Whereas in the previous meta, she was literally pivotal in almost every single role, or every single composition. So, and I think that was Boston was really hanging on Striker's incredible Tracer play, but now that Tracer isn't basically Tracer is now no longer what like what Lucio used to be, where Lucio was a mainstay in every single thing. You know, they've kind of taken more of a role for certain comps, and I think Boston was really relying on that. And Striker that's not taken away from Striker being a good player, but when it came to the Widow battles, I mean, Carpe won almost all the time. And then as far as flexibility, Carpe and EQO are more flexible, in my opinion, than Striker and Mistakes. Nothing against Striker Mistakes, but when it came to, you know, making the hard swaps and counter picking and stuff like that, I think they were at a disadvantage.
Do you think that's the main thing that hamstring them is the Tracer not being as reliable and stable as of a pick?
I feel like it had to have been, and then I
think that was the main thing that helped that was holding them down in stage 4 too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other thing is, I think they were using that for so long that when the meta switched it up, when meta changed up, they didn't have a whole lot else in their back pocket, so they were kind of starting from scratch. Which is that's what it looks like on the outside. I mean, who knows what the actual issue is, but that's what it seems like from the outside. Is as soon as the Tracer wasn't the big deal anymore, they were struggling to get their foothold on anything. Now they still had incredible strategies, and I mean, Gamsu is still amazing at his tank role, and Mistakes has been doing really good, and Neko and all of the and Kellex have all been doing good, but it's just it wasn't quite enough to be on the very top. So I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sad that Boston lost to Philly, but I mean, they kind of deserve to. I mean, they just weren't playing up to what you would need to beat Nixel, in my opinion. So,
yeah,
it's just
if Boston had if Philly had been not as hot and had lost to Boston, or Boston had beat them but looked the same strength that Boston looked, right? Like if Philly just wasn't, I think we can agree Boston would have got,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Pretty handily dispatched.
I mean,
by
maybe within the next few weeks they could have,
Well, we thought they'd be better because they had time for preparation, and they seem to be.
I think they were so. I mean, this is my opinion. This is not a verifiable fact or anything, but my opinion is that they were relying so heavily on that Tracer carry and on those comps based around that when the meta changed, they had nothing. So they were starting from scratch, and so they've barely been able to keep up. That's what I think has been the issue.
I think that's probably right, and it happens.
But I didn't mean to detract from your Gladiators thing. We were talking some. Oh, Fissure and Remix said something to do with
it. Yeah. Well,
they're lost. They're
6-0. Yeah. So I don't think it's like, oh man, they would have won if Fissure played. I think personally, I am a Fissure fan, so I'm biased. I think they would have stood a better chance. But I mean,
I agree.
If Fissure thought he wasn't performing well, the team made a decision, and that's their decision to make. So
yeah.
Was it the wrong one? They might have lost anyway. Maybe they would have got some more series or some more map wins. But the thing I think is just I don't know if they would have won anyway with the way London decided to perform on Saturday. I think any team that didn't expect them to perform at the level they did might have lost to them just because the difference between how they played on Wednesday. They played Wednesday and they got destroyed. And then they clearly took the time they had from Wednesday to Saturday to really fix whatever the issues were and, come back stronger because, man, did they look. I don't think we've seen London look that good since stage 2?
Stage 1, stage 2. Yeah.
Stage 1, stage 2. Before they started that kind of slow decline, they hadn't looked as good. So, yeah. I think the Valiant, if they play like they did on Saturday, the Valiant are going to have their work cut out for them. Even though the Valiant have looked super strong lately, but London, we can't sleep on London.
It pains me to admit, but the teams that deserve to be on the top right now, I think, are the ones that are at the top. It just kind of I mean that's kind of the way it's supposed to work, but that's just the way I feel. I feel like the teams that really have been, and the only exception being that Boston was a very strong performer throughout the season, but I think we've talked about this on the podcast, I felt like their biggest weakness was their inability to change. They can perfect something well, but they cannot change quickly, and I feel like that has been very apparent and throughout this, and so that's why they don't deserve to be up to the top.
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
That being said,
Philadelphia's the only one that I feel like is because I feel like London has a switch that they can turn on at any particular moment, but they're a little bit more. They'll do it. Like London kicks it up a gear when they need to, I feel like, and Philadelphia sometimes does and sometimes doesn't. The way it looks from my angle, so Philadelphia is the one I think is going to get knocked out first.
Yeah.
Personally. Well, I mean, going against Knicks.
Philly's kind of been like that. They're like a momentum team, right? They kind of strike me as that. If they start really strong in a match, I think it was them that we're talking about.
Yeah.
If they start really strong in a match, they can close it out versus pretty much any other team. Like if they really get that ball rolling, it's difficult to stop. But if it doesn't start rolling early on, it feels like previously at least we haven't seen them get enough push to grind it out, except for at least not against the top teams. They've done it before I'm pretty sure they've come back from some deficits, but
yeah, they have
to teams lower on the ladder more. Have they ever? I don't know if they've reverse sweeped. I mean, the Gladiators have, but it's still
Gladiators have. Yeah,
they've done it quite a few times, but couldn't do it this time.
Well, Gladiators is the team that I was not like. I knew they were gonna be like a dark horse kind of thing, but I actually didn't think they were gonna make it this far.
Yeah.
And
they made it this far pretty much off of Fischer's shoulders,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like he totally solo carried. The thing with his style allowed, Surefour to be able to get more work done, and he also got more consistent throughout the season, and so did Void was a good addition too, but Bishu also got better over the season, I think. I think from the beginning of the season to the end, he definitely went from being kind of a middle of the pack or lower the middle of the pack diva player to being actually really quite good. But yeah, I don't know. I would have liked to at least have seen Fischer come in at least once, right? Just to see if the team looked at any better on a map or something with them. Especially when you get down, just throw the Hail Mary. That's one thing I see is like. It seems to happen in a lot, and I guess I'm not really one that can talk so much on it, but I see it all the time in like League of Legends and like even sports, pretty much anything competitive. It seems like a lot of teams they have this they have this strategy, and then it doesn't work, and then it doesn't work, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work, and they keep, it's like sunk cost fallacy similar or something. They're just like, we put this much time into the strategy, if we keep doing it, it will work one time, which it makes sense to have that kind of confidence. But I've seen a lot, I've seen other times too where you see, just fuck it. If your back's to the wall, that's the time where I feel like you get the most value out of just trying to throw a curveball. Because you could say, oh, well, maybe this time it would have worked out if we had keep going with the strat that wasn't working, 5 times previously, but probably not. So you might as well have done something different to at least try to, throw your opponent back a step so you can maybe gain some ground, right?
As a Patriots
but I'm
fan,
not a team leader or anything, so what do I know?
As a Patriots fan, I have seen the Boston Patriots, or the Boston Patriots. Wow,
Boston Patriots.
I confuse it. The New England Patriots. I've seen them come back. Some of their best comeback games have been from just like Hail Mary decisions, basically. Subbing this guy in, throw this. We're gonna run this formation and just go. We're gonna see what we can do. That I like seeing that because it's true, because I very rarely see a team like pound their head into the wall with a strategy even though it's not working and then it eventually succeed. I very rarely see that.
Yeah, it usually does.
Well, and that's why I hate watching. Well, I hate going to high school football games. I never go if I can avoid it. But even college games to some degree. Not college football can definitely have some layered strategy to it, but One thing I hate seeing is seeing the same play run over and over and over and over and over again, and they just keep getting blocked, and the ball's not moving, and I feel like a lot of the teams in the Overwatch League have been doing that. Very few have this kind of like, oh, this isn't working, let's change it up, let's get things moving. And I think that's one of the greatest things about having a deep roster is the ability to switch things up. And and then the counter argument to that is always like, well, they're not as practiced with so and so individual. Like, oh, like let's say in Boston's situation, you know, oh, they're not as practiced with aim god, so don't put him in there. But it's like, yeah, but maybe that's what the difference needed to be to win.
I mean, I think that philosophy totally makes sense going in right as you start. Right, you should always start on what you think is your strongest foot.
Yeah.
But when that foot gets kicked out from under you and you're struggling to stand up on it, I mean, you like you said, most do just try to keep getting that foot forward, because if it works, if you get that foot back up and you're on it, yeah, you could probably get it. But if you can't ever get back on it, just I don't know. I'm more of a fan of like we both are, just trying something different at least, because at least I feel like, you know, if you do lose and you tried to do something different, the argument that you tried to do everything you could is a little easier to accept. You know, when you do one thing the whole time and it doesn't work, you're like, shit, well, what if we tried this, or what if we tried this? Whereas when you do something, when you try multiple different things and they don't work, you're just like, fuck, man, we just got outplayed. Like, they just beat us. We tried a lot of different things and it just didn't work. Maybe we should have stuck, you know, with the one strategy that had worked before, but it wasn't working either. So
I feel like that was the biggest thing missing in the Overwatch League, and really very few teams made use of this, was having the deep player rosters, having the sheer amount of different styles and the ability, because especially stage 3 or stage 4 they changed it that you could change every map what your subs are. And dude, at that point, man, I really wanted to see teams throwing out different players all the time and changing up the play style.
Right.
Granted, that adds to player stress and fatigue where they have to learn more and do more stuff, but good lord, think about it this way. Some of the best games have been when teams have prepared for each other. When Boston, like when Boston beat New York, Boston prepared for New York pretty hard. Like, that was cool. But what could have totally thrown that off would be New York throwing an absolute curveball, like doing a
breaking the prep, something have prep for.
And especially with the level that these guys are playing at, prep is almost everything. So if you're able to throw that off a little bit, man, that's crazy. And especially if you can be effective with it. And
now, I mean, you know, you could try and it won't be. Sometimes it won't be.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's also the argument that since with stage 4, I think that change should have been implemented sooner. Because I think the reason we didn't see a lot of subbing out after the rule changes, it got so close to playoffs, and there were a lot of teams that were on the wire, like Houston and for instance the Gladiators. So they wanted to keep trying. In that sense, I think it makes the most sense that you want to not try to change things too much, so you can just keep working on what you've worked on up to that point. But hopefully in season 2, especially early on, we do see a lot of more flexibility, you know, like throwing this play, especially if you're like up 2-0 over the Dragons or something. Just fucking bring out your B squad. So what if they lose a map? It's the Dragons. If they play like they did in stage 1, you'll probably still win, no matter who you are in the Overwatch League. As sad as that is to say,
that's so terrible.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I hope Shanghai can do what they need to do to actually be a legitimate contender in stage 2, because that would be a lot more fun. But so far they just haven't. They did get more competitive over time, but obviously not a good season when you're 0-40.
Good lord, man.
Oh man, I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever seen a team not win a single game.
It's
in an entire league. At least not in sports.
It really is.
Yeah.
But
back to the back foot thing. Like the strategy.
Yeah.
Back foot. I guess that was a weird thing to anchor on, but
I kind of figured. I got you.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I've seen the opposite too a lot of times in esports, and it confuses the hell out of me, right? So I feel like for me anyway, the proper time to try to change your strategy and throw curveballs when your back is to the wall and you're probably going to lose anyway. However, I've seen a lot, especially with teams. There's one team in particular I'm a fan of, and they've done this, but they have a strategy that's working and they're winning, right?
Right.
And then they're winning, but they're not winning so crazily. They're not so far ahead of the pack that they can just do whatever and it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when they decide to try a different strategy, and then it just goes to hell. And it's just like, no, like when you're already winning, like why would you want to purposely give your opponent like some extra ground, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're ultra confident, like, like a team that didn't have any losses, like the point where I guess where Nixel was for stage 4, even though it kind of seemed to bite them in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're in a position like that, sure, it doesn't really matter. But for the most part, I see teams try to throw curveballs when they're like, winning. Like I feel like when you're winning, you can just keep doing that. The proper way to do it is to do that until your opponent forces you to do something different, right? Like if it's a best of 5 and you're 2-0 doing the same thing both those games, why wouldn't you just do it the third game, right? Because chances are they'll probably lose to it. If they don't, well, then you change because they adapted to that. And then if you change and you actually have a deep strategy pool or whatever, all you have to do is change it, enough to throw them off for what they just adapted to, and then bam, you can just close it out. That's what a lot of the top tier teams have done in like other esports. They're like, okay, we're winning this. We don't need to change. It's the onus is on the losing team to force the winning team to change. But yet you see it the opposite way a lot of times. Fucking just like, nah, stick my head in the sand. We've been losing with this strategy 5 times in a row already. The 6th time it's gonna work, trust me. Or it's just like, all right, we're up 2-0. We got no reason. I mean, it doesn't matter. Obviously, sometimes you pull it off, you're up 2-0, and then you lose the third one, then you just bring your strategy back in. But I've seen plenty of times where a team's like up 2-0, then they try to throw a curveball, then they lose that third game, for instance, then their momentum gets cracked. Yep. The other team wins the 4th game, they get their momentum in check, and then the 5th game, the team that was ahead is just they have a loser mindset because like, fuck, we were gonna win and we throw it away, and then they got nerves too much and shit. It's just
this is probably because the league is new. And these were new teams, and everybody was kind of hobbled together last minute. And a lot of it was last minute. But I feel like there was something missing in the training like the way these guys have been practicing. I feel like it's been very rushed and not, with the exception of probably Nixel. I feel like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. They weren't training.
You know, my opinion is what you think.
Go ahead. I formulate this thought.
I think based on a lot of the stuff we've seen in the rumor and a lot of the players, a lot of issues have had with burnout already in the first season, and like some had some legit mental problems arise. I think that I think a lot of teams have focused more on quantity of practice over quality of practice. And that's was a thing that was really bad for a long time in younger esports too. Yeah. Like, they're just like, fuck, we gotta like, we can play the game 18 hours a day, so we should be playing 18-hour days. When really it's like, you could practice 10 hours ineffectively and get way less out of it than you can if you practice for 3-4 hours, and that's more effective practice if you're better at using the time. I learned that firsthand when I was learning guitar in high school. There was times where and there's times where I could over practice. I'd practice so much that my brain would start to wander and do other stuff, and then I would start messing up, and then I would start getting frustrated, and then I would actually get worse than if I just took some real just maintained a good positive headspace, practice for a few hours, and she's like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to keep forcing it. I've already proven myself today that I'm where I want to be for today, and then tomorrow I can move on to the next thing. It's just.
Well, the other thing is. I guess where my mind's at is, from the beginning, people have repeatedly said, and not just people on Reddit and stuff, but like coaches, players, people within the league, everyone has said that these guys are all like they all belong in the league. They're all at super high skill level and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the answer to beating other teams was, well, we practiced more or we threw in more time. I think, especially when you play the game as much as these guys have.
Shanghai. Remember when Shanghai's
slamming practice?
Yeah, and they did get better over time, but that may not have been related to that schedule. It could have been just because they played more together on the stage.
Well, yeah,
and I think practice you can get.
I think the best thing that could have been done for the training was working on the team. So not how good are our strategies, because I feel like everybody kind of had a pretty good grasp on their strategies, But like even Shanghai had great grasp on some of their strategies. What happened is when the team kind of needed to work together, and when people needed to engage that creative mode of their brain that puts them into that zone, basically, a lot of it fell apart. And I feel like that was because the aspect of the team, not necessarily the team strategy, but the aspect of the team as well as the aspect of personal development was kind of non-existent.
It was like a communications breakdown, it seemed like.
Yeah, for instance, like I've had problems with my problems logistically that I've needed to work out with my business, right? And I'm sitting here and every single minute of the day, all the time, I'm just thinking about it, and like my head is wrapped and engaged in it. I'm doing everything I can to work on this, and it's always been some sort of failure after another. And what's the times that I've been able to fix it, or I've been able to make something work, or the aha moment has happened, is when I've taken a step back, I've centered myself, and I've kind of taken a deep breath, like, okay, let's approach this in a different manner. I wasn't pushing it. I had the knowledge, I had the intuition, I had everything. I was just too blindly engaged in whatever I was engaged in to recognize it. And I think that's why some of the teams that had maybe like Nixel's, definitely they had a good training regimen, but they've had a little bit more of a laid back approach to the way they were, to like who they're playing and what map and how their strategies played out and everything. And I think a lot of that, granted they are all really, really good, but I think a lot of that was also due to the players. If the players aren't so like ticked in the head and overworked and overstressed, I think they can perform better. And I think that's where we saw the downfall of Seoul Dynasty. I think Seoul Dynasty was one of those teams that worked really well. And you notice that in the beginning of the season, they did phenomenally well. But I think what happened is as they pushed and they pushed and they pushed and they pushed, even Ryo Jae-hung was like, look, I'm exhausted, you know? And what's happened? It's,
I think also they were too used to being the best and not really being challenged that often.
Probably too, yeah.
Because I think that I can't think of a good word for it, but the trust that they had between the teammates was just based on previous results and not really much else. Which is why, like, I remember midway through the season, they, instead of scrimming a lot, they had said that they were taking more time to just hang out outside of the game and just become better friends. And I think not long after that was when they actually started doing a bit better, because it's like with some teams, not just Shanghai. I mean, Shanghai has legit communication like walls, right?
Yeah.
To overcome. But even when you don't have those communication walls, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Whenever you're doing like a team activity and you're part of a team, if you don't trust everybody on that team fully to do their job in that, the second anything goes wrong, it's really hard to get it back, because people start thinking like, it's not the same as like panicking if you're afraid, but it's kind of like, especially when you are really competitive and you do have confidence in yourself to do things, sometimes you think like, oh shit, well, that's not being, so now I'm going to have to do it because these other guys can't do it. And a lot of times, you doing that forces somebody else's hand to do something different. It's just kind of, it dominoes out. It's a lot easier when everybody, even when you lose, if you trusted that everybody could do their thing and you just stick with that trust, it's easy to recover from the loss, I think, because then you think, then it's less of an individual thing. It's more just, we as a team just didn't perform where we needed to, rather than like, all these individual problems. I don't know.
And I feel like this is a byproduct of this being a new esport, new players, new scene, new everything. And because I genuinely don't believe Nixel is beating everybody for the most part, because they're just that much more mechanically skilled and have that much better sound strategies. I do not believe that for a second. That is the reason why they are
strategy maybe for a while, but but the mechanical side, yeah, I definitely don't. I mean, look at Carpe. Carpe could probably fit right in the Nixel just because he is so.
Carpe might be one of the most mechanically sound there is. Like
exactly.
It's really, really well. I mean, think of it this way. Sabiobi can't land a fucking pulse bomb to save his life, but
not sometimes, but yeah, for the most part.
What I'm saying, but like he doesn't even need to. Their team is just fucking phenomenal, and I think strategy is definitely a part of it, and I think some teams definitely need to work on that and other things as always. But I think a large part of their success has to do with other things besides that. has to do with the how
I think
it
a
is
lot
for
of
the
it comes from
individual.
the trust.
You know, a lot of it comes from the trust and proper team
like,
building. And
I remember when they were wrecking people, and a lot of the time, instead of doing what most of the teams did, where they would really try to protect their backline, they'd just leave Ark and Jonok out to dry, so to speak, because they trusted those two together to be able to handle situations of a tournament. And what did they do? They did. You saw times where Ark would be on shit. Was it against the Gladiators or Philly? I don't remember who it was against, but it was on Volskaya, and it was just Ark and Jonok in that the room on the side of point A where there's the med pack and then the balcony goes up. And they were in there, and then maybe it was even Boston. It might have been Boston.
I forgot who it
was. But anyway, whoever the team that they were playing was, they sent Winston and a bunch of other people in, Winston especially, and dived straight in on them.
That was Boston. That was Boston.
The rest of I was thinking it was Boston there in a sec because I just was thinking it was Gamsu that
it was Gamsu. Yeah.
But instead of all of Nixel like panicking and fleeing like, oh shit, we got to, they just left them there, and Ark just hit the sleep darts he needed to, and Jonok just fucking killed him with Zenyatta orbs, because not only did those two trust each other, but the rest of their team trusted everybody, trusts everybody. And so it's like you trust these two, you trust this one, you trust these three, you trust these four, we trust each other as five. I think that's one of their big advantages. They just really, really developed that trust. And a lot of them multiple of them played on, LW Blue, so they had some previous, but they were known as chokers in playoffs and stuff. So their trust wasn't built solely on the history that they had been the best team and they'd proven themselves in that way. They had lost when it mattered, but they still had trust that they could win. Right. Yeah. I was gonna say too, when you're talking about, taking a step back, I think the fact that most people get to a point where they realize that that's a healthy thing to do, right? You're having a problem, instead of throwing your head at it, sometimes it's better to just walk away. It's difficult, especially when you have a real competitive mindset, or you really want to do it, because you're just like, fuck no, like if I keep trying, I'll get it. But sometimes you don't. I mean, I learned that there's plenty of times when I was a kid where I was on a boss in X video game and I couldn't beat it, and I sat there for hours frustrating myself, right? And then, as it got easier as I was getting older, which is kind of the point I was getting to. But sometimes, I was still a kid, but I would just be like, I'm done frustrating myself today. I'm going to play a different game, right? Then the next day I wake up, and first thing I'm like, I want to go try to beat that boss. If I can't beat it after a few tries, instead of frustrating myself for hours like I did yesterday, I'll just stop. What happens? I go back. Maybe it's not always the first try, but usually within a short amount of time, I end up beating it, because I just took a step back and I wasn't making the same mistakes that I was making the day before. So where I'm getting at is, I think that because a lot of the players are younger, it kind of influences that kind of thing. A lot of them don't have the experience to tell them to just take a step back, relax.
There's actually science. There's actually science to that. I've been digging into a lot of this kind of stuff, podcasts and information from people far smarter than I am. But one of the things that they were talking about is the sleep doctor. He was talking about it. He was saying that when they say sleep on a problem, to figure it out, it actually works, because what's going on is when you're trying to figure out a problem, let's say I have a problem. Let's say I have a problem. I have a lot of problems. Let's say I have one particular problem in my mind. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to fix this crack on my cell phone screen, because it's really annoying me. It's not the screen; it's the screen protector. So, but okay, let's say I'm trying to figure.
I like how you pointed that out.
I just want to make sure everyone knows I'm smart enough to have a screen protector.
Yeah,
But anyways,
I'm not. I don't have any kind of protection on my phone, and guess what? There's no cracks. Oh wait, is there? No, there's a crack in the back. There is a crack here.
Okay.
But that cracked because I got in a fucking car accident because a guy hit me while I was driving. So it's not really my fault.
Okay, but anyways.
It was either that or I dropped it the next day. I don't actually remember.
Well, you probably had the concussion brain. But anyways, okay, so you're trying to figure out a problem. And so I'm trying to figure out how to fix this crack on the screen protector. Which, just replace it, but whatever. When I'm trying to figure it out, there's neurons that are trying to create pathways in my brain. So I'm basically carving out what my thought process is going to be. And I'm creating these neurological pathways. But the problem is sometimes they reach a stopping point. Not like I didn't think of anything, but you're scientifically, chemically, they cannot go any farther. And you're actually hitting a mental wall. You cannot they cannot route. They're not able to connect the dots. When you sleep, and specifically if you get full good sleep, you're hitting REM sleep and all that, what's happening is your brain is actually reconfiguring these connections. So if you were routing your brain to try and figure out a problem and you couldn't connect the dots, and it basically left a path that was not, didn't go to anywhere, and that, when you're sleeping, your brain subconsciously is trying to reconnect the dots. So this is all stuff that you for the most part have no conscious, concept of, but it's reconnecting all this information so that when you wake up the next day and you go to look at the problem, you're actually thinking different. You may not realize it, but you are thinking differently, and it could possibly lead to a solution.
Sounds like the pathways are just being optimized, basically.
Basically, yeah. When you sleep, that's what's happening.
I've read quite a bit about sleep, and I know that while we know relatively little, the large consensus across a lot of different fields and studies is that it exists for the purpose mainly of repairing and like, betterment. Like, we don't just sleep because we have to be on. Just because it's convenient to sleep through the night, it's because we have to get stuff right, especially mentally. So that makes sense that it would work that way.
But anyways, I think.
But even if you don't sleep, sometimes all you need to do is just get away from a problem, stop frustrating yourself, and you come back with a bit of a clear mind.
Well, but that's the thing. It involves the clear mind, and you have to have a brain dump. And so I'm picturing this scenario in my head. You're 18, 19 years old. You're in the Overwatch League. You're all of a sudden getting paid a ton of money. You're away from your family.
You're in the spotlight, too.
You're in the spotlight.
If you stream, you have to worry about what you say all the time now.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So there's all this pressure, all right? And now you're playing a game and getting paid for it. Now you're with the team, and now you're spending all your days practicing, because in your mind, and rightly so, you're thinking the more effort I put into this, the better I'm going to be. Makes sense. But then you're doing that, and then you only get 4 or 5 hours sleep because you're streaming and you're doing this and that. So you're not getting really good sleep. You're just kind of getting mess sleep, and then you're getting
unless they're one of those small part of the population that get a full night's rest off 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I would picture this being a very typical scenario amongst the Overwatch League. Is you're not getting a whole lot of sleep, you're getting on caffeine, then you're going to working out, then going to do stuff with your friends, and then you eat, and then you're going right back into it. But you don't get you're constantly in the environment. Think of the situation in the Philadelphia, like their game.
Wait, by friends, did you mean teammates?
That's why I meant teammates. Whatever.
I was gonna say, because I'm pretty sure most of them don't have a chance to hang out with anybody other than their teammates.
Right. But like, picture this for the Philadelphia, their like a squad house that they have right now. So you wake up, you're amongst this, you're in the group, you're in the group, and all you are is the team doing team things. Then you go to the stadium, then you do team things. Then you come home and you're doing team things, team. And even if you sleep, you're not actually breaking yourself away from this for a little bit, and you're constantly engaged, and that could cause neurological ruts, basically. And if they're not resting properly, keeping themselves centered, stepping away, having good practice on learning how to be introspective and stuff like that. And they're young. It's hard to expect anybody to do this at this age. That would be a reason why. And that's actually a reason why, like in high-end professional sports, like top of the line sports, you don't see them that young. They're generally a little bit older than 18, 19, 20.
Well, I mean, in basketball specifically, they have been picking up younger and younger players as a trend. However, it's treated differently too, because the team house thing is cool and nice in some aspects, but there was a lot of back and forth on this issue not too long ago in the league community, for instance, right? But for instance, now Team Liquid is got, at least of the American esports organizations involved in League of Legends, at least they are. But even beyond that, they have some of the best investment, like the most. They're one of the richest esports organizations around. I wish they would have decided to invest in Overwatch League Season 1, but maybe Season 2 or 3, who knows. In any case, they now, like all the other teams for the longest time, especially for franchising, they had, team homes. And it makes sense. It makes sense when you think about it lightly, right? Like, they're all in a team, they're all doing all these activities together, like you're saying. Like, yeah, that'll be good for cohesion and stuff. But not everybody can do. Some people do. Some people live with roommates up until the point where they can't for some other reason, because they want to. So other people are different. They want to have their own space to go and retreat to. And like, having lived both ways, there's definitely a difference between having a separate room in a house and having a separate space that's only your own. But I think we don't see that in a lot of esports yet, or we didn't, especially in League, until franchising kind of started because they had that financial security. Well, Overwatch League is a franchise league, so there should be more, but it's more of a cost-effective thing, I think, right? Because think about, not only does it cost a lot of money to house all of these different players, especially in LA. Might be a bit different when the orgs settle onto their own cities if they're a little less expensive.
Hell expensive, man.
Not only is it really expensive, but these players are also really young. You know, they may not be ready. They may not be mature enough to be put in their own space and left to do that. That may stress some of them out more because then they have.
Case in point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it depends. I think over time, as the league gets older, just like it did with League, you'll see more of that because I think that's one thing that's really healthy for athletes, like in pro sports. You were thinking is, you know, they go to work, they practice with their team at the training facility and all this stuff, and that's when they go home. That's their time to reprocess. They probably get better rest. They can take a step back from all that. You know, especially if you know you're good teammates, but sometimes you have an argument, or sometimes you just don't. You know, you kind of butt heads a bit, right? It's usually good to be able to totally remove yourself from that person for a while so you can be, you know, less on edge about it and stuff. And I think, well, I mean, I didn't know if we'd get a chance to bring it in, but I was just reading this before we started the podcast, but Effect, he's a good example of how the stress can get too much. Did you see the stuff that was translated, he said on his stream?
I saw some of it. Can you go over the refresher? I saw some, not a
lot. I'll read the Effect stream rough translations from these are Raisin Muffins on Reddit, but they translate it because I guess during the stream it was asked to be Korean only, but they didn't care because they knew it'd get translated one way or another, so it wasn't against Effect's wishes for it to be translated outside of stream. But there's quite a bit here, but the number one point is Effect thinks he can't be a pro any longer or someone in the spotlight. He pretended to be okay, but it's been piling up. And it goes into more detail. He talked about how he thought about what was making things so hard on him and came to the conclusion that it was the burden responsibility of being a pro. He could try to not let it get to him, but that's unfortunately not his personality. He can't just get over things easily. Talks about how, well, now he's pretending not to notice that he's breaking down, but he can't anymore. He feels really bad when he starts missing shots, even when he knows his aim is good. Because of this, when he tries to play, he can only go for about 2 to 3 hours before turning the game off. But he can't take not practicing playing either. He talks about how because of his personality and stuff, he didn't feel like he could talk to anybody about this kind of stuff. So that kind of added to piling up. Then it talks about some of the stuff that happened with his girlfriend, but that's not really relevant, so I won't go into it. You know, but the overall thing is that the stress really got to him, and he didn't know how to handle it. And he's tried. It says even when he took medication for things, it still didn't help. He knows he hates the fact that he was a terrible teammate. He knows he was. He screamed at his teammates and feels so bad. I think it says in there. Where does it say? When he remembers back to when he would yell and scream at his team, he feels so sorry he wants to die. Just because they lost a game, he was so horrible to them, ruining the mood. He shouldn't be playing team games. So he thinks that he's just not. He can't handle it mentally, and he's not. Man. He thinks. I think it says in there if he gets to a point where he can fix all these problems, he would come back. But he's looking like he's going to retire just because he can't handle it mentally, and he doesn't want to negatively affect all the people around him like he did. So.
That's so sad.
I mean, it's for his health. It is sad. You know?
I mean, that dude is.
It's better than him continuing and having more issues if it's really.
I mean,
you know,
not sad that he's doing that. He should. It's sad that this whole thing was an issue to begin with. Like it's terrible.
You know, I'm not trying to. This isn't no way a mention of trying to blame it on like Dallas Fuel, for instance, because at the end of the day, those were his problems that piled up. But I wonder if the same problems would have piled up at least as quickly if he had started on a team that was good from the start, right?
Yeah.
Like if
maybe
playing for. I mean, those problems are still there, and they're going to manifest in one way or another. But it may not have been so bad that he wanted to get to the point where he quit. You know, if he was on a team that was winning more, like. Maybe. I mean, eventually, obviously, these problems would have caused some other ripple effects, but I do wonder if it accelerated it by how bad the fuel was for the longest time.
Oh man, yeah, I feel for him, but man, that's the thing. Playing a high octane competitive sport, whatever it is, at this level. Is not what everybody thinks it is. It is not just because I could sit here in my comfy computer chair in my home in my neighborhood with the things that I'm comfortable with, and let's say I'm the best Lucio. That's cool. That is a completely different thing than playing at the highest level in those situations, in like the Overwatch League situations. It is.
That's why a lot of players who have the skill to be a pro across any esport, they don't, and a lot of them choose to stream rather because it's simply much less stress and it's a lot easier time.
It's not like, oh, when you get to Overwatch League, okay, now I just need to focus harder and like get like and just play more. It's like that's not really playing at any, like, let's say if you're in the NFL or anything like this, your whole world's different now. You have to do like a billion and one different things to be at this level, and it's not easy, especially if you want to win. And it's not winning by practice harder. It's winning by, you need to change your diet. You need to change your habits. You need to change when you wake up. You need to change like how often do you have you time? Do you meditate? Like the stupid stuff like this that people think like this is what makes
no excuse. Teams. You can't live entirely off, what is it, Pepsi or Coke you drink? Well, you only drink for a long time.
And I love XQC, and that dude loves his chat, and he's probably one of the best streamers. He's probably, there's an article here. He's nominated for one of the best streamers for XQC, nominated for Streamer of the Year by Esports Award. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and he deserves it. He has a great stream, and he loves his stream. Does a really good job with it. But but trying to do that and be full-time pro, it broke him. I mean, not everything that happened to him was his fault. He definitely, but it's still, even if none of the bad things had happened, he'd still be under an insane amount of stress. Because he's, just doing both of those things is insane. And then you need you time, and then you need to change. Like, it's not easy. And especially when these kids are 18, 19, 20s, early. It's not, it's not.
There are individuals out there that can pretty much just behave like machines and function only for the purpose of being great at the game.
Well, yeah, Jonak.
But it's rare. Yeah, but it's rare. Well, I mean, did you, Jonak actually, did you see the video that was it Nix? No, Jonak put out, but it's like an hour and a half long video of him just meditating in Nixel's like backyard area.
Really?
Yeah, he's just meditating for an hour and a half straight up. Like,
okay, see, that's kind of where my point. That's one of the reasons
he probably, that's one of the things that for sure leads to his success is the fact that he practices mindfulness. As it's
and this is something that's actually done in other sports. They don't talk about it. You don't see it as much in like the hype videos for the March Madness or for stuff like that. You don't see that, but this is stuff that happens on the back end for high end sports. And I don't think this being so new and the players being so young, I don't think anybody really fully realizes that. Most don't, anyways. And I'm hoping to see, I'm hoping to see the players and the organizations and the structure and the teams and the coaches. I'm hoping to see it all mature so that we can see higher level play. Because as great as the Overwatch League has been, it's been great. I've enjoyed watching this, every week when I get home from work, getting to watch these games and then talk about it with you guys. Fucking phenomenal. I'm loving it. And I hope to see way more of this in the future. But I do not think we have seen like top pivotal, like high end play. I don't think we've seen the tippy top. I think there's so much more room for potential, and I think Nixel's just the tip of the iceberg as far as that's concerned, in my opinion. But it needs to progress and mature, and I'm hoping that people kind of have their head on their shoulders. Some people do, to help it guide it along that path.
I think it's interesting too because I've seen we've seen the same mistakes happen, and like League. Like I always bring that up. Sorry if anybody who listens hates League, but I mean, it's really relevant. And it's a good example.
It is relevant. Yeah.
Not only have I been interested in watching that for years, but I've paid a lot of attention to not just the games themselves, but all the outer workings, the stuff outside of it. I'm like that. As a kid, I always thought it was funny, those guys who could list off all the players in, X Sports League and like stats and stuff. But I kind of became that. I remember one year where I almost didn't miss a single competitive game across all of the competitive regions, and I still watched players individually outside of that and kept up on the social side of it and the news and all that crap. So, but it's really relevant, especially because they've matured a lot. And it's funny for me that Overwatch League has that as an example they could have built off of. And they did in some ways, but they still have made some of the mistakes that took League of Legends, for instance, years to correct. When you think that, well, they, if they had paid more attention to it, they would not make those mistakes. But a lot, as with a lot of things, people just have to make the mistakes before they realize their mistake. You can't. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much you tell them or show them, no, this is a better way. They just have to learn themselves. So, but I think so. And I think a big problem, like we've discussed before, I believe, maybe not if on the podcast, but certainly outside of it. But one of the things with esports, a pervasive problem that's been around and still is even in more mature, or I guess I think it's a problem. It's like I was talking about earlier with conventional sports. Your physical body has very real limitations. You can only do so much, right? You can train effectively and make sure your body's healthy enough to exceed those limitations, but you can't just fucking LeBron James, right? Amazing, crazy good athlete. That dude would be hurt really bad if he tried to play basketball for 16 hours, 18 hours a day. Just wouldn't work. You can't, physically you can't. With esports, I mean, physically, you can,
but you could, but you are
physically. More than likely, you're not as at risk for straining a muscle or doing all these other things you could, right? So physically, yes, you can sit in front of a computer and play a game for 18 hours. However, it does have very real health effects. But a lot of that gets kind of ignored because not only the player's mindset we're talking about, but it's just the mindset at all. You think oh, well, there's no reason I can't play this video game for 18 hours straight, so I should, right? And I think not only does it have some physical implications, especially if players aren't taking time to get up and stretch or just take a mental break or do something, especially if they aren't eating healthy, that compounds everything. If they're only drinking soda, that shit has real consequences, and it all just fucking builds off each other and just gets worse and worse and worse over time. They're just. I had a conclusion there, but I lost it.
Well, I get what you're saying, and there's a lot more to, because the thing is, when you're playing a real sport like soccer or basketball, your mind and your body can kind of almost sync up. Like your work, let's say you're doing drills with your basketball for 8 hours. Okay, your mind is you need a break, but your body's also going to need a break. Luckily, they will coincide to some degree or another.
A lot of the time you get physically exhausted. Once you get past the point of physical exhaustion, that's when your brain starts to fucking you're done, dude.
But the things that go along with that. So when you're working out and you're doing all this stuff, you need to be drinking water. You need to be in the right mental state. You need to be fit. You need to be active. And this is stuff that, so when you're gaming, that can easily slip. But if you are like in Jonek's state, I'm sure he doesn't just drink soda. Imagine if you drank good water and good drinks that are good for you, you ate nutritious meals, you slept proper amount of hours, and you took a lot of time to refresh yourself mentally, meditate, do all this stuff. Imagine how much better of a player you're going to be just with those things added into the mix and done properly.
And of course, it's not a guarantee. It's not like if you're the worst widow in the league, and then you just change your diet and start exercising, you're going to be the best widow in the league.
No, but it will help.
It won't hurt you. No, the only way it'll hurt you is you have to take some time away from the game for practicing. But practicing all the time, generally, as we've seen, it's more harmful for most people anyway. There are people out there that, as with pretty much anything, these rules don't necessarily apply. But for the vast majority, it's not even a matter of, oh, well, I drink soda and I eat shit all day and I'm fine. I don't feel bad. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're unhealthy to the point where it's causing you problems, but it's pretty much a proven scientific fact that if you did not do that, if you drank healthier, if you ate healthier, if you exercise, you would be better at whatever it is you're doing, because your body, your mind operates within your body. The more effectively your body can operate, the better your mind can operate.
Beyond that, even every little thing affects the whole way more than anybody realizes. That sleep guy I was listening to. He was yeah, I wish. I'd have so many questions. But anyways, when he was he's a professor, and he has degree in, what is it? I don't know.
Okay.
Anyways, whatever. But anyways, the point
Smart guy,
what he was talking about is he was saying the difference between 6 hours of sleep and 7 hours of sleep is so huge. Literally, I think he said if you're getting 5 hours of sleep, you are 50% less effective at any physical task or something, some kind of where your mind needs to connect to your body for like that type of like hand-eye coordination, you're like way less effective at that. Like he was saying that he was pulling up stats for like fighters and stuff like in the UFC that didn't sleep properly before a fight, and their rate of winning dropped down by like 80 something % with an hour less sleep. So we're talking about that's just sleep. We're not talking about meditation or eating right or drinking properly or pacing yourself. We're just talking about an hour more sleep increases your performance that much. And this is documented stuff. I'm not making this up. I mean, I don't know the percentages. I don't remember exactly. It was been a month since I listened to this, but what I'm saying is, if all this has so much of an effect on it, I feel like those are the areas that the teams could improve on more. Because, I agree. We're seeing good strategies, we're seeing excellent mechanical skill from these players, but what we're seeing is when things fall apart, it falls apart. Oops, I hit the desk. Things fall apart, and that
because the foundation isn't strong enough to hold up all the rest. When the roof falls, the foundation isn't strong enough to hold up the supports.
Yep, exactly.
Like now I will say, like I mentioned earlier on the sleep thing, there are a very small portion of the population that can sleep less, and it's just as effective.
The guy was talking about that. The numbers is like 8%.
Yeah, like supposedly, like for instance, Kobe Bryant in his prime said he would sleep for like 2 hours and be awake for like 8 and sleep for another 2 hours. And the people supposedly James Franco is one of those. He only sleeps for about 4 or 5, and that guy's, but the other counter is like LeBron James says he likes to sleep more than 12 hours easily. It's just different people.
I cannot physically do that.
But the percentage of people. My point is that there are people who can sleep less, but for the vast majority, 7-8 hours. If they're not getting that, they're kind of hurting themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, not even kind of.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Oh dude, we're already at an hour. Oh, we're over an hour. Man. Well, I mean, there isn't a whole lot more to talk about. I mean, we kind of covered what we needed to cover.
Yeah. I mean. Oh well, there was one other thing I was gonna get into.
Overwatch League's on ESPN and Disney.
Actually, no, but that is a good point. It's awesome. If you haven't heard, they worked out a TV deal. So Overwatch League will be on ESPN 3, Disney XD, and for not only these finals, but also the World Cup and Overwatch League Season 2. I believe the entire season will be televised. If I'm also not mistaken, I think it's the first game of the finals here for Overwatch League. Is actually going to be televised on ESPN1, like the big main channel. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah. If you have TV, if you have cable or satellite, turn into those channels to give them extra ratings. Why don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, check this comment on Reddit right here said check Twitter when it goes on to ESP1, ESPN1, and see how many people rage. It's gonna be good.
For me, I just think it's sad. I don't check that stuff because it's sad that so many people care so heavily about any aspect of what other people enjoy. Well, like if people are enjoying stuff like Twilight, man, that movie, I hated that movie. I hated those books. But I never once wanted to go to a movie theater and like shit on people for enjoying it. Because at the end of the day, if you're shitting on somebody for actually really enjoying something, that there's nothing wrong with it, right? You're just an asshole.
No, that's true. But I find for the most part, especially on social media, generally that gets drowned out pretty well. Like for instance, on New England Patriots, their official Facebook page, they were promoting Boston Uprising. They were like, hey, congratulations on your win, blah 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 blah. There was comments.
Oh yeah,
wrong, of like people like, get this shit off my Facebook. But
don't you get your shit off Facebook.
But the highest rated ones, the one with the most upvotes and comments and likes and loves and whatever, were ones being like, hey, I don't even watch this, but this is cool. Good job. Like that. Same thing with the r/Patriots subreddit. When Boston was doing stuff, they did some cross promotion in there, and the general reception was like, dude, this is awesome. People that were into it or people that weren't, but like, hey, this is good. We're seeing some growth. And then
usually the positivity kind of goes to the top, which
I'm glad for, because it wasn't always that way. It was definitely not always that way.
It's especially cool when, I can't remember the name, but there was some ESPN commentator that said it I think it was in reference to some article or something comparing a League of Legends player that's really good to an athlete that's really good or something, and it was just a soft comparison just for the sake of, like presenting an argument. Like it wasn't like, and this commentator like said some dumb like disparaging shit, and then a lot of other people, even his like some of his peers that worked at ESPN were just like, no, you're being ridiculous, like they like fucking stop that shit quick, because it's nice that now that it's gotten big enough that we actually do have real public figures that aren't even necessarily inside the community that will defend and say, no, you guys are just, you shouldn't be like that. Like that's stupid. Yeah. But the other thing I was gonna get out real quick is apparently, well, during their press conference, most of the gladiators predict Valiant to win the finale against Philly. And London also predict Philly to beat New York. Apparently, a lot of the teams think that Philly is going to beat New York. I was reading into it, and apparently New York and Philly have not scrimmed at all. So a lot of those are based on, I don't know what they're basing it on. I mean, Philly looked good, but Nixel hasn't scrimmed against Philly, which kind of makes sense, because when it's tight in the finals, you usually don't scrim against your partner. You usually scrim against the most comparable competition, so that your direct competitors don't know your strats and shit, right? This deep into a tournament. I think it's interesting. I'm a Nixel fan, so biased, but I think Nixel's going to beat Philly. I think if Philly plays as well as they did versus versus Boston, it's not going to be, a walk in the park.
Okay, so my thing is,
I think Nixel's going to win.
I think when Philly's on, they're on, and they're almost unstoppable. But the thing is, Nixel's got the complete package. They have the best support duo. Probably one of if not the best tank lineup. And then their DPS duo is every bit as good as EQO and
I guess a lot of it is centering around the idea that a lot of people think it's due to the fact that Zenyatta isn't played as prevalently or hasn't been by the other teams, and so they think
Jonah's not even a Zenyatta main.
That's the thing, right? There's been other times where Nixel just ignored whatever the flavor of the month was and played their shit, and it worked. It didn't work in stage 4, but there's a lot of different outside stuff about that. Were they really trying 100%? Did they look bad? Maybe they actually were bad in season 4, or not bad, but in stage 4 maybe they weren't as good and they haven't recovered. But I think the thing is it's all speculation. We won't know until they play. And I am a Nixel fan, but even if I weren't, I would think that Nixel's going to win, because they've still, that's still empirically, that's the correct choice. They've still proven themselves way more times.
If Philly
wins, it's an upset.
If Philly has a chance to win. I'm not saying they're over here like David versus Goliath. I think they do have a
Carpe and EQO are tough to hold down, especially if they perform well, even by the likes of Sabiobi and Pine, or Sabiobi and Libero, or Libero and Pine. But they can go toe to toe with them.
I think they definitely have the capability to win, but I think the chances are still fairly heavily favored for Nixel. I would put Nixel at a 70% chance of winning.
Yeah.
Very easy, 70-75.
As a Nixel fan, I think Nixel's going to win it all. I think the toughest competition for Nixel will be the Valiant, if they're still playing like they were at the end of stage 4. Yeah. Or London, if London
kicks it up,
if London continues to kick it up. I mean, they kicked it up versus the Gladiators. If they continue that kind of form, then I think they'll be really, really good competition for Nixel too. I think London will beat Valiant. I hope so. I really do. I think the empirical tough, correct choice is the Valiant, but I just if London can do what they did, if they don't stop their momentum, they're just as good as Nixel, basically.
But I want to see Nixel go to the finals are Barclay in New York.
Right? How sad would it be if Philly somehow beat Nixel and
Philly
there's not even
New York needs to make it there. I wanted to see that. I really did want to see them there. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. Obviously, if Philly does it, it's an upset. That'll be good. But I want to see New York in the final.
What do you predict for the next round? What do you think the series is going to end up for Valiant versus London?
Next week. Yeah, next week. Or this week. Wow, we're in this week. This week, I predict New York beat Philly. I think Philly could put up a fight. We might go to go to three matches.
I think it'll be a 3-1. I think Nixel will win 3 maps and Philly will get 1 in the series. But no, it's a best of 3.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting and thinking.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be.
Philly might pull something off, but it
might be a
2-1.
Yeah, it might be a 2-1
or 2-1. Something I don't know. Philly could do something well, but I think New York's is gonna take this. The Spitfire versus Valiant one, I think, is gonna be the one that's gonna be the closer match. That it's going to be the closer match if Spitfire keeps on this momentum roll that they have with Gladiators, which is they very well could. So if they keep on this roll, it's going to be a close one. If Spitfire chokes, I mean, I think Valiant has it pretty handily.
What's possible? I mean, Gladiators, as much as I like them, they definitely have more exploitable weaknesses than the Valiant
for sure.
So,
but if I'm going to predict it all the way around, I think Spitfire is going to. I think they're going to keep their momentum. It's going to be a tough fight for me, really. If they keep their momentum, it's a 50-50 to me who's going to win between Valiant and London, honestly, because their Valiant has been doing really good. So that one I really couldn't even say. I think because
Burgering and Profit though, man.
Yeah,
we got to see a glimpse of how good they were looking in the early stages of Overwatch League, and Agilities and Soon are very good, but Burgering and Profit's highest highs I still think are higher than we've seen from Soon and Agilities.
I would like to see at the end, and I think New York's going to make it to the end, and I think Spitfire. I hate to say Valiant has the upper hand, but they might.
Oh, they do.
I think they do.
They definitely have the upper hand. It's definitely an upset if New York, or I mean, if London wins versus them. I'm hoping for them too.
I'm hoping for them too, because I would love to see New York versus.
London now that I can't get a Gladiators Nixel final, I would love New York versus Nick, because it'd be kind of a cool rematch between the season. It'd be interesting, right? Because season 1, Nixel faltered and London won. Season 2, London faltered and Nixel managed to beat them, and then in the finals we see it all come full circle and see who really can grind it out when it's the biggest match on the line. I think it'd be fun. Of course, if Valiant beats London, and then Nixel beats Valiant in the finals, that would be some sweet revenge, especially for all the Valiant fans who claim that they're the greatest team in the world forever because they won the stage 4, even though what did it mean for London?
So
it doesn't necessarily matter.
Obviously, the big upset would be if it ended up being Philly versus London. That would be for the grand finals.
Yeah,
that would
be
fucking nuts, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I doubt that would happen, but if that did happen, that would be like a massive upset. No one would expect that.
Really, on both sides.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I'm fully expecting a New York versus London or New York versus Valiant game. If Philly wins, I mean, hey, if Philly wins, I mean, at the end of the day, especially when you're at this level, once you're at grand finals level, this is it. This is the end. If at this point you have lost in that many matches played, you didn't do your job.
Yeah.
Like there's no excuses.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, whoever wins deserves to win.
There's no sandbagging excuse from this point forward. If Nixel doesn't perform against Philly, then it wasn't as easy as just taking a break and hiding your shots. They just weren't good enough.
Exactly. And then so I mean, no holes barred here. So,
which is exactly why I do think Nixel is gonna quickly put a silencer on a lot of the people who are saying that they're not the favorites, because this is where it really matters. This is where they're like, they don't have any reason to hide or do anything else. So I think we'll really see the best Nixel at their best again. But
Absolutely. All right, well, that's gonna wrap it up for this week's episode. We're gonna have next week's episode probably about this time, covering the week 2 for the playoffs.
Hype up the finals match.
Basically. And then finals match, I think, is a week or 2 weeks after that last one, something like that.
The finals are on the 27th.
Okay. Yeah, so the finals are the week after.
The 27th and then the 28th.
Yeah, so at the end of this week, we'll be covering this week's matches, and then next week is gonna be it, man. I'm excited. I'm stoked. We got some good Overwatch coming. I'm excited to see more improvements and see the best of the best play. As always, if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, or inquiries, or blunderous assaults on our demeanor that they would like to poise at us. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. For social media, we're also on Twitter and Facebook. I barely get on the Facebook because Facebook sucks.
Yeah.
But mainly Twitter. But anyways, feel free to hit us up there if you like. Yeah. Anything to add, Vox? I forgot what I always say at the end of the show. So
No. No.
We're such an unprofessional podcast. Did I say that right? Unprofessional? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I felt like saying improfessional for some odd reason.
I don't know. Well,
no,
unprofessional.
It's unprofessional.
Well, unprofessional is like a thing you do. I don't know if you can be an unprofessional. You could be a professional, but I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say you are an unprofessional.
You are an unprofessional.
You are unprofessional.
You are unprofessional. I don't know.
You're
an
unprofessional.
All right, we're heading out here. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Later.